So, in a joint message, you had the United Kingdom,
Hmm.
France, and Canada all basically come out and say that they are now threatening sanctions against the state of Israel. And this is a massive sea change in rhetoric compared to where these countries have been at and where they are currently now. We've heard some, different rumblings coming out of, various nations, especially across Europe, of people condemning what's going on in Gaza, through what Israel's actions are. Seen countries like Italy and Spain and France and Ireland obviously have all come out at different points in time over the last year and a half talking about how they are considering or have already done weapons embargoes. Spain has also, at multiple times, not allowed Israeli ships to come into their ports. There have been
Hmm.
plenty of people calling on the ground for boycotts, for sanctions, for stopping, for full weapons embargoes, from the people in and around Europe. But we haven't really
Yeah.
seen too much of that coming through the actions of the governments yet. But I have a statement here from these three nations. I'm going to read a little bit of it really quickly, where they talk about they are strongly opposing the expansion of Israel's military operations in Gaza. The level of human suffering is
Mm.
intolerable.
Mm.
They are saying that, while Israel suffered a heinous attack on October 7th, they've always supported Israel's right to defend itself. They said that the escalation is now disproportionate. It's the word that they chose to use there. They said that they
Mm.
will not stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions. And if Israel does not cease the renewed military offensive, that it will and lift its restrictions on humanitarian aid, that they will take further concrete actions. And they go on to define what those concrete actions are, saying that we will not hesitate to do in targeted sanctions on the state of Israel if they do not stop their, how do they describe it in here? Really quickly, breaches of international human law. I'm
My
sorry,
God.
international humanitarian law, which is
Hmm.
interesting because we also have something here from the nation of Germany, who are also saying that they are now considering stopping sending weapons to Israel. To which the reason why this is also significant is the fact that besides the United States, Germany actually sends Israel almost just as many weapons as we do. So they are a huge supporter of the state of Israel, sending them a lot of the weapons that they've been using in Gaza over the last year and a half. They are now considering stopping sending all weapons to the state of Israel, especially because of the fact that they say that they are breaching international law. So it is very striking to me, Natalie,
Yeah.
that from my perspective, and I think from the perspective of a lot of different scholars and a lot of people, journalists who have covered this over the last year and a
Hmm.
half,
Hmm.
Israel is not really doing anything that it hasn't been doing the whole time. People are now talking about the famine that is, that is coming to the people of Gaza because Israel's had a blockade of the area. They have not been allowing any humanitarian aid in. And that has kind of been true the whole time anyway. So I think for
Right.
me, what is really stark about all this is not that Israel's doing something new and it's triggering this response from Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Canada, but rather that it seems that public pressure has now mounted enough in these nations that these governments feel like they are forced to act in this way, in a way that I honestly didn't know that we'd ever see. Because after
Yeah.
everything that's gone on so far, all the devastation that has happened, I mean, there was an airstrike on a tent like refugee camp that was in a school just 2 days ago, where Israel bombed this camp at night while they were all sleeping. It was almost exclusively women and children, and they were all killed, with the exception of just maybe a couple people who actually survived the fire of being, because the rest of them were just burned alive.
My God.
So this is what Israel has been doing the whole time. It's been well documented by many organizations around the world. Many genocide scholars are calling it just that, a genocide. And I've been floored that nothing's happened up until then, up until this point, but I am heartened to see that some of these countries are willing to finally do something more, talking about weapons embargoes, talking about sanctions, because it's been a long time coming as far as I'm concerned.
Hell yeah. And let me ask you a question. Did you watch Eurovision this year?
I did
Do
not.
you watch? Okay. I say this for a reason because Israel was one of the participants, one of the singers was from Israel, which is weird because it's Eurovision. So I don't really know why um, Israel's involved in it, but they were like the main sponsor. Moroccan
Yeah.
Oil sponsored the whole thing. And I felt like something was shifting when the singer got up on stage and there were audible boos coming from this European audience. And my husband and I went and looked all of this up. They actually were so loud that in post production, the organization that runs Eurovision like pulled back the sound on them and put in clapping to make it sound like she wasn't getting booed. And
Wow.
then what was really interesting was she didn't do that well with the judges. She was sort of like in the middle of the herd. But then all of the sudden, the popular vote, she ends up in second place. And everyone is saying that this thing was like rigged. And it was kind of an interesting juxtaposition. And I realized at that moment, I was like, something's going on here. Public opinion has turned in Europe at a different level than I think as Americans we see, because we don't really get that kind of a window into the culture firsthand. But I love watching like international stuff because I just like seeing how perspectives actually are as opposed to an American lens around a TV show. And it
Yeah.
was very clear from everything that I read that people were unhappy. And apparently, somebody went out on stage at one point and they brought like free Palestine flags and they tried to like rush the stage. So there was actually a lot going on the ground at that international event. And it really got me thinking, there's so much attention on this type of show. It's like watched by 180 million people around the world or something. The fact
Yeah.
that they felt the need to hide the actual sentiment of what was going on,
Right.
and then not that long after, European nations come out and sort of like finally take a stand. I'm not saying Eurovision caused that, but what I am saying is I think the sentiment has been there and we're
Right.
not hearing it. We're not seeing it. And it was a groundswell of things and certain things that I think have happened. Like last week talking about 14,000 babies, risking starvation if they didn't end this blockade and get aid through. I mean, that kind of thing really starts to hit people in the gut. And there's only so long that I think these governments can act in the way that they're acting without public opinion sort of drowning them out. And the only difference is in this nation, we, at the end of the day, did not vote as it pertained to what was happening internationally or where our taxpayer dollars were going. I guess we
Right.
didn't care about those taxpayer dollars. We just don't want them to go to feed children here. So it's just, we can bomb children with them there. We just can't feed children with them here. Those seem to be our tax priorities. So that's why I said earlier, it's like philosophically, we have to figure out what is it that we actually want our government doing. Because right now it looks like what we want is bomb children, don't feed children here.
It's really hard for me to talk about this subject and keep my composure, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. There has been so much like irrational pushback from people
Mm-hmm.
who I had respect for and who I have
Mm-hmm.
since lost respect for. I mean, to me, it's been a pretty cut and dry issue for a very long
Yeah.
time. There are 2 million people on the Gaza Strip, an area
Mm-hmm.
that is the size of Manhattan, and half of those people are under the age of 19.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very young population. These are almost all kids, almost all of them. And when Israel is talking about who they are bombing, who they are attacking, they always say that they are going after militants. But every piece of data that we've gotten out of this area has shown that over 90% of the people that they have killed have been women and children.
Yeah. Because they're lying.
Like and
Like that's
and I'm
it.
sorry, and the elderly. Let me amend that last statement. But like it is just civilians for the most part. Like and
Mm-hmm.
everything that you look at when you break down what they have done, it just violates international law after international law after
Mm.
international law. I mean, they have in all semblance of normal society, they should be treated no different than how Vladimir Putin was treated after his invasion of Ukraine, right? You would
Yep.
think that Benjamin Netanyahu would be a pariah in the whole entire world, that every country would be sanctioning them. No one would be sending them weapons. Every normal country would be breaking off any kind of ties with them. I mean, you still to this day, I really side note here, like I play, chess sometimes on like chess.com's app. To this day, if I'm playing somebody who's in the country of Russia, their like flag is still blacked out. Like they don't display the
Mm.
Russian flag anywhere. If you watch a Russian player playing in like the US Open, they black out the flag. Like they have made everyone around the world has made it very clear that they were not condoning what Russia's doing in Ukraine. And yet, to me, I don't understand how Israel hasn't gotten that same treatment. Like they,
Yeah.
in my mind, should be a pariah state for what they have done. They
Hmm.
have violated every norm that you could think of. They continue to do so, and it's made no sense to me, Natalie, that it's taken this long for so many countries to do what I think to be as the bare minimum, which is to call it what it is. When
Yeah.
you are trying to forcibly displace a bunch of people, that is ethnic cleansing. That is a violation of
Hmm.
international law. When you are cutting off humanitarian aid to a group of civilians, that is violating international law. When you
That's right.
collectively punish a population, you are violating international law. I mean, just
Hmm.
going down the list, they've been doing this since October of 2023. So
I
I do
know.
not know what's taken so long for so many countries to get on board and to do the moral thing, which is to say that, Natalie, this is something I was saying from the beginning. They have the
Mm.
same access to intelligence that we have here in America.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Hmm.
we have always had the ability to go in there and know exactly where members of Hamas were hiding. And if you wanted to target them individually with like a precision strike, you could have done so. And they have done that.
Period.
They have
Yeah.
done that already. They have actually targeted people in different countries that they knew were Hamas leaders with
Hmm.
precision strikes. So they've always been able to do it. They chose not to.
Hmm.
They just chose not to. They
Hmm.
didn't have to do any of this. In fact, there was a ceasefire deal brought to them just over the weekend where they were going to release all of the hostages and they turned it down. They
Hmm.
turned it down. So, like, I just, the solution that I want from all of this is I want more countries to come out and forcefully condemn Israel. I want them to sanction this country and I want them to stop sending them weapons
Yeah.
because I just do not believe in any way, shape, or form that Israel has ever cared about anything other than eliminating Palestine off the map completely. That seems like that's been their intention all along. And that's the final thing I want to say about this today.
No, and I agree with everything that you said. And I think what breaks my heart, I was watching a really beautiful documentary about Palestine over the weekend, about the history of it. And these people, when you start learning more about who they were and how they were utilizing this land and the way they related to their land, it breaks my heart because you can have different ethnicities live together and different religious groups live together in harmony. It didn't have to be like this.
Yeah.
What always upsets me is it's never the people. It's always the governments that want power, they want control, and they want it to look and be shaped in their ideology. And the reality is, these people could have all, I think, coexisted the way that they were coexisting before World War I, and it all continued to go downhill from there. And it broke my heart watching this and learning what a hub of industry and art and culture and manufacturing this land was, and who these people were trying to be, and how they rose up the ranks with education and with culture and the appreciation they had for the natural beauty of their land and the way that they cultivated it. And there could have been, I think, a time where many people could have lived there and prospered there together. And unfortunately, we know that it, once again, like we said early on in this conversation, it's the people that want power that get power, and they end up hurting people that just want to live in peace and grow their fig trees and their lemon trees and just live together. And it really broke my heart. So I don't know what the answer will be, but I certainly know that providing weapons to a nation that is indiscriminately bombing children and women and the elderly and anyone. That is not the way forward here. That is not the way forward. I sometimes think we almost act like if we're bombing men, that's okay. There's always this idea that like, well, we can't bomb the children or the women. And it's like, well, we really shouldn't be bombing the men either. Like, can we just say that? Like, it's okay to say
Natalie,
that
you're not ready for that conversation.
no one deserves that, like I'm ready for that conversation. I just think that sometimes we try to qualify once again what we were talking about earlier, who is worthy of salvation,
which lives matter,
and who is
which
not.
lives don't matter.
And we all know that, right?
Yeah.
So just a reminder that, of course, I think the reason we are focusing on the children, and rightfully so, is because they are the most innocent and the most vulnerable and need the most protection. And we know that. But I don't want us to negate the fact that people deserve a chance to survive this and thrive after this. And there are more people than aren't that just want to live in peace. That's all.
Yeah. So let's get to our final topic of the evening.